I love the stitch and flip technique. It creates fun angles with less work than a half square triangle. Have you ever tried to combine these techniques though? You might be surprised with the outcome. Let me show you what I mean. Hi, it's Fran Morgan with Fabric Café. We have a brand new 5-yard book, Step It Up with 5-Yard Quilts. We got extra creative and have several blocks that use the stitch and flip method in new ways that we've never done before. These blocks turned out so interesting and fun. Today, we're gonna take a closer look at how to make them. So let's get started. This quilt is Autumn Ballet. Love this quilt. The leaf blocks in this pattern are just so dynamic and they really pop off of that great background. The really cool thing too is the fabric number 1 can be directional friendly, and we love that. Our alternate block is just made with simple strip assemblies and then additional strips that are simply sewn to the side, so it's gonna go super fast. Now our leaf block, we've used a combination of half square triangles and stitch and flip method to make this block. So let's take a look and step through exactly how we've made it. So we're gonna start with our little leaf piece. So what we've got here, this is our traditional stitch and flip. We have a square, then another square in which we have drawn a line from corner to corner. We're gonna line it up right here on this corner, take it to our machine, and we're gonna sew right on top of that line that we've drawn. So I have one right here so that you can see we've sewn right there. Now the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take our ruler and we're gonna measure from the stitch line 1/4 inch, and we're gonna trim this part off. And then when you trim that part off, you can just fold this back, press it, and there is half of our stem there. And you can see it looks great. Now you're probably going, that doesn't look like the stem, but we're gonna do the exact same thing again so that it looks like the stem. I'm gonna fold this back so you can see. We are going to simply repeat that process exactly the same way again. We have our square on top of our fabric number 1 there. We're gonna draw the line and sew on top of it. We're gonna cut 1/4 inch from that line. This is all gonna go away. And then this will be pressed back to make our stem. And here is our finished stem block. It is so cute. You know, these are so fast. And at first you're going, what am I doing? This is a little different, but it really goes fast. And you see how it perfectly made the stem for this? I love that. Okay, we've made all of our stems and you saw how simple it was. So now let's start making each of our units and build this gorgeous leaf block. We are going to make some half square triangles, and we're gonna sew a half square triangle, 2 together, just like this, with a square on top. And then here we go here. And you see how we've done that. We've just sewn them together. So that's 1/3 of our leaf block. Now the very center of our leaf block. Let's look at that. So what we have is a rectangle of fabric here with a half square triangle. We're gonna sew this half square triangle on top of our rectangle, and it's gonna look just like this. This is the very center section of our leaf. Let's do the very last little part here. This is where that stem comes back into place. Now we've already made these with our really cool stitch and flip on 2 corners. We're gonna sew this to a square, and then we're gonna put a half square triangle on top of those 2. And whenever you sew them all together, it looks just like this. So here's our stem, here's our square, and here's our half square triangle. I am going to grab the other 2 finished units here. We're gonna sew these 2 together, just like that. Then once those are done, we're gonna sew this one together, and there's our leaf. It's really simple when you take it step by step, and that really cool stitch and flip method makes the perfect little stem. Now this block is so much easier than it looks. You can easily chain piece on the side of the stem, trim and press them, and then chain piece the second side. These are gonna go super fast. You're just gonna take this one at a time, and you're gonna have your leaf blocks in no time. Now, let's take a look at our next block. Now the next quilt that I would like to share the block is Hip Hop. This is a great quilt, and actually it's probably one of my favorites out of the book. I had so much fun designing this. I love the amazing dynamic movement in this quilt. We have that diagonal line going down, but then our little triangles kind of give you a different movement going the other direction. Now what's really cool is this is a one block quilt just made with two colorways. I would warn you though, I would steer clear of directional fabric on this one because your blocks are rotated to get this great stair step movement there. Now there are no half square triangles in this quilt, which is almost mind-blowing because when you see it and you see all these triangles, you're like, what? But there's not one half square triangle. It is all done with stitch and flip. So if you're looking for a really fun quilt with lots of dynamic movement, but don't like half square triangles, this is perfect for you. So let's step out this block so you can see how easy it is. Okay, we have got our very first part that we're gonna do. We are going to cut a square. We all can do this. Then we're gonna cut a little bit smaller square. We're gonna draw a line diagonally from corner to corner, just like you know we do on stitch and flip. And we're going to lay it on one of the corners of our square here. And of course the diagrams in the book step all of this out very clearly. We're gonna sew on the line, then we're gonna trim off on this side of the line, and this part will be discarded. So I have that here. Here is our trimmed part where you can see we've trimmed it off and we've just discarded that. We're gonna do this again on our square. We're gonna do it in the opposite corner. So I have another small square here with the line drawn diagonally. We're gonna sew it, trim it, and then we're gonna press it and square our block. You can see our two corners here. It's kind of like one of those, you know how we say half snowball? This is kind of like a half snowball, but it's just these two opposite corners. Okay, so now we're gonna do the second step for our block. We're gonna actually sew the strips to two sides. Now, whenever I did this, I made sure that my stitch and flip corners here are always the same direction. So this one's in this upper corner, this one's in this lower corner, and they're opposite. I'm gonna take a strip of fabric and I'm gonna sew it to the top, and then I'm just gonna, after I sew it, I'm gonna trim it even. And that is going to give us this right here. So you can see we've just trimmed it even. Here are our little stitch and flip corners there. After we've done this step, we're gonna take the strip again and we're gonna sew it to this side all the way, and then we're gonna trim it even so that the block is bordered on two sides and it's nice and square. We are going to take another square and we're gonna draw the line diagonally for stitch and flip, and we're gonna put it right on top of this corner where we've sewn these borders. Now this is kind of fun and a little different, and this is actually gonna save you a lot of time when making this quilt. You're gonna put it right here, you're gonna sew on the line, we're gonna trim it, and then once we sew and trim, we're gonna press it back, and this is what it looks like. So it's basically just that stitch and flip on top of that bordered corner, and it's gonna give us that great diagonal movement. To finish this block off, we are going to kind of repeat a similar process of what we just did to make this border and stitch and flip. We are gonna take another strip of fabric, and we are going to sew it to the top, and we're gonna trim it even. And you can see right here on the top, trimmed it even. Then we're gonna do it on the side. We're gonna sew this to the side, and we're gonna trim it even. You see how this is coming together? It's really a simple process and steps. So after we sew that to the side and we've trimmed it even, we're going to do our stitch and flip corner again, just by drawing a line diagonally, sewing it, trimming it on this side, 1/4 inch from the stitch line. Discard this, and then we're going to turn this back. And that is our block. Now, what's really cool about this block, if you have never done stitch and flip before and you want to practice this process, this is actually a really good quilt to do that with. Why? Because none of your stitch and flips need to match another stitch and flip. All of these, you see how that there's nothing matching here? And there will be nothing matching on these points. This one doesn't match. So it's really a great one to practice with, and you'll be a master when it's done. And it makes an amazing block. It's really dynamic. So we're gonna make half of our blocks with this colorway, and then we're gonna make half of our blocks with the second colorway, done exactly the same. This is a 1-block quilt. And what's great about that, as we all know, is you're repeating the process so that you kind of get in that groove, that streamline, and it really reduces mistakes because you know exactly, oh, I'm doing this step now and I'm doing that step and I've done it and I've got it. All right, now let's see what happens when we combine a stitch and flip and a half square triangle into 1 block. This is our Waltz pattern, and it is gorgeous and it's simpler than you think. Now, in this quilt, you can use a directional fabric in your number 1 position, and it's shown in that large square that is bordered, and it's gonna really show off your focus fabric. Now, the alternate block has minimal amount of half square triangles that are nice size, so they're not too hard to make, and they're really easy to work with. And whenever our 2 blocks come together, it makes this a really cool diamond right in the corner of each of the blocks, which I think is a really neat. So our block A starts by making half square triangles. And these are nice size half square triangles, so they're really easy to manage. And because they're bigger, there's not that many of them. Then what we're gonna do is we're just gonna cut a small square and we're gonna do a stitch and flip on one of the corners. Now we have purple here. We've drawn our line. We're just gonna sew it. And whenever I'm sewing these, what's really great, if I'm using purple like this, or whatever color you're using, it's always gonna go on this corner with this number 2 fabric here. So you know you've got it right whenever you're feeding it through the machine. Then I'm gonna do the opposite corner. So on this side, I have this purple here, and then I'm gonna do another stitch and flip on this corner. We've got our line, we'll just sew it, and you'll know that on this fabric, you're always gonna sew this square against this fabric. You know, whenever you're doing your fabrics, kind of look at it. I would chain stitch these and feed them through my machine, and I would know that this color always goes on the white, and this color always goes on this light purple. Makes it super simple. So here we have another example here. We've got our stitch and flip trimmed. We've got it all sewn on here, ready to trim. Once we have it all trimmed, this is what we have. You see, we've pressed them back. The base of this is our half square triangle, which is really cool. And all we've done is stitch and flip the corners, and it makes it look so cool. Now we're gonna make 4 of these to make our block A's, and we're just gonna put them together and rotate them. It is so neat. So we've got these 2 together, and then we'll take 2 more, and these 2 together. And once these are sewn together, you're gonna have this really cool little diamond in the middle, and then a bigger diamond and like a bigger diamond. And I really like that. And then these corners are those corners that are gonna create the other diamonds when you put all your blocks together. So let's look at the second block. The first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna make a strip assembly. As you can see, we just have a nice big piece here. This is our focus fabric. And then we've sewn the 2 strips on each side. We're gonna cut a piece off of this. So this will be the base of our block, and we have that right here. So we've just cut that off. Then we're gonna take 2 strips of fabric. We're gonna sew 1 on this side, and we're gonna sew the second on this side. Then we will trim them even with top and bottom. So that's going to give us our bordered block. I love using the stitch and flip this way. It's really different for me. I've not done this and I think it's really cool. So this is our border block. Once that's all done and trimmed, we're going to come in here and do the stitch and flip on the corners. Now we've got one here, it's marked, it's stitched, it's ready to be trimmed. We're going to do this on all 4 corners. Like I mentioned before, I like going ahead and doing all of the sewing parts on each corner. Then I take it and trim them all, and then I take it and iron them all. I just think it's a little bit more efficient and it speeds it up a little bit. Once you've done all of that, we then have our gorgeous block with our stitch and flips on the corner, and it still has that nice frame, which makes a very interesting frame because it's kind of at a diagonal, but it's so much easier than having to do a half square triangle and a square and a half square triangle. This makes it super fast. I love all of the interest you get from combining these 2 techniques. Now, all of the kits that I showed you today are available on fabriccafe.com, so be sure to go check those out. If you would like to see all of the patterns in our book, Step It Up with 5-Yard Quilts, then be sure to watch the video that pops up. Happy quilting!